You know the feeling, right? That huge burst of motivation, the perfect plan to read more, exercise every single day, or finally learn that new skill. And then, well, life happens. A few weeks later, that perfect plan is just a ghost, kind of haunting you, a reminder of a good intention that just fizzled out. But what if we stopped seeing these as personal failings? What if instead we started treating them like a case to be solved?
So, welcome to the Habit Autopsy. In this explainer, we're not just going to talk about self improvement. We're going to become forensic investigators of our own behavior. Yeah, really. We're going to examine the evidence, look at the facts, and figure out once and for all what separates the habits that survive from the ones that are basically left for dead.
All right, to start our investigation, we've got to understand the crime scene. And that means looking at the beautiful, clean theory of how habits are supposed to work, and how that clashes with the total, utter chaos of our actual lives. I mean, this is the dream, isn't it? It's the big promise from books like Atomic Habits, this idea that these tiny 1% improvements, if you just apply them with perfect consistency, will compound into these incredible results. The graph is so clean, it's elegant, and man, is it a powerful motivator. This is the ideal plan. But then, reality hits. And, it's not a clean graph. Nope, it's a messy scribble of unpredictable noise, friction, and sudden, adorable chaos. And often, the source of that chaos is something we love. In this case, it's a dog who decides your perfect morning routine is now his morning routine. So this brings us right to the heart of our autopsy. If everybody's life is messy, why do some habits manage to power through the chaos while others just collapse at the very first sign of trouble? To find the answer, we need to look at some actual specimens. Okay, here's our case file. On the clipboard, we've got two survivors, a daily 12,000-step walking habit and a consistent golf swing practice. And then we have two victims, a daily reading habit and practice on an indoor putting mat. They look like simple cases, but trust me, the cause of death and survival is absolutely fascinating. First up, let's put the survivors under the microscope. What was their secret sauce? What exactly allowed them to not just survive, but actually thrive?
Let's start with the walking habit. It started small, back during isolation, but its real genius was how it completely eliminated friction. The cues were literally everywhere. Taking out the trash, getting the mail, these things weren't interruptions. They became opportunities to get steps in. But the real catalyst, the true life support system for this habit, the dog, an external force demanding a walk every single morning, which actually made the choice to not walk way harder than the choice to walk.
Now for the golf habit. This one survived for a totally different reason, but it builds on the same idea. Just look at this graph. At first, the reward was external, literally just making a tally mark in a notebook, a simple visual win. But over time, the reward became internal. It morphed into this deep, driving curiosity, this desire to experiment with a swing during the week and then see the results on the weekend. The habit survived because its reward became so much more valuable and personal over time.
Okay, we've seen the survivors. Now for the grim part of our investigation. Let's examine the deceased and issue the official cause of death. And you're about to see they were both victims of the same silent killer. And this illustration, this seesaw, it just perfectly shows the culprit: friction. The successful golf habit, just doing an air swing, had zero setup. You just grab a club. The putting mat, though, totally different story. It was stored in a closet, it was a whole hassle to unroll, and yep, the dog would often come and mess with it. That little bit of effort to get started created this massive barrier that the air swing just didn't have. And when we look closer, the pattern is just so obvious. The daily reading habit, it was an early morning casualty. Its time was stolen by that same dog demanding a walk. And the putty mat died because of that simple yet incredibly powerful wall of resistance created by having to set it up and then put it away again. Both habits were pretty much dead on arrival because they were just too inconvenient. So our autopsy is nearly complete. We've examined all the evidence from both the survivors and the deceased. I think it's time for the final diagnosis. What patterns can we pull out from all this data? When we lay out all the evidence in this matrix, the pattern is just undeniable. The successful habits were obvious. They were easy and they were satisfying. Their cues were crystal clear, the friction was super low, and the rewards were real. But the failed habits, they were invisible and inconvenient. The putting mat was literally hidden away in a closet. The cue itself was gone.
It's a pretty clear-cut case if you ask me.
Now, this diagnosis uncovers something even deeper, this trap of perfectionism, which usually shows up as confusing motion with action. So, motion is the planning part, researching the best workout plan or spending hours trying to find the perfect pudding mat. It feels super productive, right? But action is what actually delivers a result. It's doing one push-up or just using the mat you already have. We get stuck in motion because, well, it protects us from the possibility of failure.
This is captured perfectly in a famous photography experiment. So, one group of students was told they'd be graded on producing one single perfect photo. They spent all their time on theory and planning. That's motion. The other group, they were told they'd be graded on the sheer quantity of photos they took. So they just shot and shot and shot. That's action. And in the end, all the best photos came from the quantity group. Every single one. So the crucial point, the real takeaway, is this. The survival of your habit isn't determined by the quality of your gear or the perfection of your plan. Nope. It's determined by one thing and one thing only: getting your repetitions in. Action, not motion, is what actually rewires your brain and builds the habit. And that leaves us with one final thought from our autopsy. We get so focused on the perfect outcome, this grand vision of who we want to be. But what if we've been looking through the wrong end of the microscope this whole time? What if the secret isn't about crafting a better, more elaborate plan, but about ruthlessly, obsessively eliminating the friction that stops us from taking that very first imperfect step?